Welcome to DBSA's Living Successfully with a Mood Disorder. My name is Ingrid Dietz, and I'm the Chapter and Programs Vice President at the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance. I was first diagnosed with depression when I was 20 years old, and I honestly wasn't sure that my life was worth living anymore. I was introduced to DBSA the following year and was amazed to learn that so many were dealing with the same issues as me and were living full and happy lives. This is why DBSA feels so strongly about our Living Successfully with a Mood Disorder course. For many, a diagnosis can feel like a life sentence, but the more you understand your unique symptoms, triggers, and early warning signs, the more quickly you're able to apply effective strategies to combat them and continue moving forward in your life. I've seen it so many times, in myself and others. People living with mood disorders can and do get better and go on to live healthy, full, and meaningful lives. The Living Successfully with a Mood Disorder course is designed to help you learn more about depression and bipolar disorder in general, as well as how you experience it personally. This course can be beneficial to many people, including those who have been diagnosed with a mood disorder, think they might have a mood disorder or are experiencing symptoms, have a loved one who has a mood disorder or thinks they might, or people who just want to learn more about mood disorders and what it takes to live successfully with them. During this course, we will learn about depression and bipolar disorder, identify the types of treatments available, define wellness for yourself, and learn about resources that may help you on your wellness journey. And finally, we'll create a personalized Living Successfully with a Mood Disorder plan. Before we jump in, please take a moment to complete the short pre-course survey by clicking the link on the course page. We will ask you to complete this same survey at the end of the course to give us insight into what is learned through this resource so that we may work to improve it. Living Successfully with a Mood Disorder is broken into 3 sessions. In the first session, there are 4 overarching objectives. The first objective is to provide basic, important information about depression and bipolar disorder. The second objective is to help participants gain an understanding of causes, risk factors, and triggers. The third is to learn how a person may experience a mood disorder. And finally, the fourth objective is to begin to understand wellness. It's important to remember that this course is not a place to get a diagnosis, and that there is much more to learn about mood disorders than we were able to fit in this course. We encourage you to seek out other information on your own about living with mood disorders. You may want to ask your doctors, therapists, counselors, religious leaders for advice and guidance. You should only take medical advice from your doctor because everyone experiences mood disorders differently. So first, let's talk about who DBSA is. And to do that, I'm very happy to welcome DBSA President Alan Doederlein. Thanks for joining us, Alan.
Glad to be here, Ingrid, and thank all of you out there watching for participating in this course. So, who is DBSA? The Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance is the leading peer-directed advocacy organization focused on depression and bipolar disorder. Our mission is to provide hope, help, support, and education to improve the lives of people who have mood disorders. One of the ways we do that is by improving recognition, early detection, and diagnosis of depression and bipolar disorder, and by empowering individuals with information, resources, and tools to help them find and maintain wellness. Because DBSA was created for and is led by individuals living with mood disorders, our programming is always informed by the personal, lived experience of peers. In addition, DBSA has an extensive network of local chapters who run more than 700 peer-led support groups nationwide.
Thanks, Alan. Now that you have a little background on DBSA, let's dive right into learning more about mood disorders. First, let's talk about depression. Depression is a real, treatable illness, much like heart disease, asthma, or diabetes. It's not a character flaw or a sign of personal weakness. As hard as you may try, you can't make yourself well by trying to snap out of it. It's much more common than some think. More than 16 million Americans are affected by depression. Although it can run in families, you can't catch it from someone else. The direct causes of depression are unclear. However, it seems that environmental, biological, and psychological factors all play a role. Often depression appears in a person's mid to late 20s, and it affects 70% more women than men. But that doesn't mean that there aren't many men dealing with the condition. It's also the leading cause of disability in the U.S. for people between the ages of 15 and 44. Before we move on to the symptoms of depression, let's take a minute to watch a short video called Out of the Blue, which talks about some of the ways people experience depression that are different than symptoms that you may normally think of.
Depression doesn't just look one way. Depression isn't something that is, always going to be that, sad, listless concept we have of depression, and that sometimes the symptoms are things that are counterintuitive.
There's a lot of irritability that comes with it, agitation, anger.
Talking very fast.
A racing of thoughts through the mind.
I get really irritable, really fast.
The pitch of my voice was really high. My hands were shaking a lot.
The background noise in the middle of making a decision. What's my family going to think? Are they going to be disappointed in me? Are my friends going to think I'm insane?
Sleeplessness or agitation, anxiety.
My entire affect turns negative. All of a sudden, I'm not good at anything. I'm stupid. Everybody else is better than me.
The slightest thing that does happen will set you off, but your mind continues to play with it. When the doctor said, "Bob, I think you have depression and anxiety disorder," it was a relief.
I know. Oh, okay, this is what's going on with me.
It gave me almost confidence in myself that I hadn't had before, because I was so ashamed with how I was feeling, and I didn't know why I was feeling the way I was feeling, and I felt badly for feeling that way. But all of a sudden, when I was diagnosed, it was like, well, oh my God, like there's a disease and a disorder and something that could be treated then, since it had a name. There's so much more to the illness than just having a reason.
It's when everything's fine and you still don't have that engagement, or you feel really awful, even though all of the circumstances are fine. That's when depression is getting in the way of the life that you should be able to lead.
It's a really difficult concept to wrap your head around if you don't have depression, don't have anxiety, have never experienced anything like that before. It's really hard to kind of empathize and make sense of behaviors if you have no frame of reference.
The rest of society needs to know that having this diagnosis is not an X on your front door, and that you can live a productive life, a good life, a fulfilling life. You can have good relationships and good friends, and you can even go through some really bad times and be okay.
As we saw in Out of the Blue, there are many symptoms which might indicate that someone has depression. Of course, there's the one most people think of, prolonged sadness or unexplained crying spells, but you may also notice things like a significant change in appetite or sleep patterns, irritability, anger, anxiety, feeling pessimistic or indifferent. Many people experience a loss of energy, have feelings of guilt or worthlessness, and have an inability to concentrate or have trouble making decisions. Other common signs include the inability to take pleasure in former interests, unexplained aches and pains, and recurring thoughts of death or suicide. Depression is a treatable condition marked by changes in mood, thought, and behavior. That's why it's called a mood disorder. There are many types of depression, and we will cover some of the more common ones here today. Doctors use the term unipolar depression to describe periods of low or depressed mood that are not accompanied by high or elevated periods. It is also sometimes referred to as major depression or clinical depression. Patterns of depression can vary widely between people or over time. Some people experience periods of complete wellness between bouts of depression, and for others, depression may be more chronic or long-term. We generally refer to depression that occurs after a woman gives birth as postpartum depression, It can be difficult for people to realize they are experiencing postpartum depression, as many women have what is often referred to as baby blues. It's important to remember that postpartum depression lasts longer than the baby blues and has a greater impact on your daily life. It's also important to note that sometimes women experience depression during pregnancy as well. Psychotic depression is diagnosed when a person has severe symptoms of depression and is also having delusions or hallucinations. Some of you may be familiar with what is called seasonal affective disorder, or SAD. People who experience SAD usually feel symptoms of depression in the winter months when the days are shorter. In the past, persistent depressive disorder was often called dysthymia, but now it's referred to as persistent depressive disorder. People living with persistent depressive disorder may have less severe symptoms, but experience a depressed mood that lasts for at least 2 years. While some types of mood disorders are more severe, the milder ones can still significantly impact someone's life and may be more likely to go undetected for a longer period of time. Everyone at various times in their life feels sad or blue. It's normal to feel sad on occasion. Sometimes the sadness comes from things that happen in your life, like you move to a new city and leave friends behind, you lose your job, or a loved one dies. But what's the difference between normal feelings of sadness and the feelings caused by depression? The first things to consider are how intense the mood is. Depression is more intense than a simple bad mood. How long the mood lasts. A bad mood is usually gone in a few days, but depression lasts for 2 weeks or longer. How much it interferes with your life. A bad mood does not keep you from going to work or school or spending time with friends. Depression can keep you from doing these things and may even make it difficult to get out of bed. While it's normal for people to experience ups and downs during their lives, those who have unipolar depression experience specific symptoms daily for 2 weeks or more, making it difficult to function at work, at school, or in relationships. Before we move on to bipolar disorder, let's pause for a minute to look at your printed Living Successfully with a Mood Disorder plan. On page 2, you'll see a list of common depressive symptoms. Go ahead and pause this video so you can mark any depressive symptoms that affect you. So unlike depression, bipolar disorder is a condition marked by extreme changes in mood, thought, energy, and behavior. Bipolar disorder was formerly known as manic depression because a person's mood can alternate between the two poles of mania, highs, and depression, lows. This change in mood or mood swing can last for hours, days, weeks, or even months. Bipolar disorder affects more than 5.7 million adult Americans. It usually begins in late adolescence, often appearing as depression during teen years, although it can start in early childhood or later in life. An equal number of men and women develop bipolar disorder, unlike depression, which is more common in women. Men tend to begin with a manic episode, while women with a depressive episode. And it's found among all ages, races, ethnic groups, and social classes. Bipolar disorder tends to run in families and appears to have a genetic link. While the symptoms for the depressive phase of bipolar disorder are similar to people with unipolar depression, most people living with bipolar disorder talk about experiencing both highs and lows, periods of mania and depression. These moods can be severe, ranging from extreme energy to deep despair. We'll talk about this more in a minute, but some individuals can be experiencing a depressed mood but still have symptoms of mania. Just like with depression, everyone may experience some mood swings in their life. The 3 main things that make bipolar disorder different from ordinary mood swings are the intensity. Mood swings that come with bipolar disorder are usually more severe than ordinary mood swings. The length. A bad mood is usually gone in a few days, but mania or depression can last weeks or months. With rapid cycling, moods last a short time but change quickly from one extreme to another, and level moods do not last long. And interference with life. The extremes in mood that come with bipolar disorder can severely disrupt your life. For example, depression can make a person unable to get out of bed or go to work, or mania can cause a person to go for days without sleep. Typical symptoms of mania include, but are not limited to, heightened mood, exaggerated optimism and self-confidence, excessive irritability, aggressive behavior, decreased need for sleep without experiencing fatigue, grandiose thoughts, inflated sense of self-importance, racing speech, racing thoughts, flight of ideas, impulsiveness, poor judgment, being easily distracted, reckless behavior, and in the most severe cases, delusions and hallucinations. As we mentioned earlier, you'll notice that the depressive symptoms of bipolar disorder are the same as with depression. It's important to remember that these are typical symptoms of bipolar depression, but you may experience other symptoms as well. It's during periods of depression that most people get professional help and receive a diagnosis. In fact, most people with bipolar disorder in the outpatient setting are initially seen for and diagnosed with unipolar depression. Often this is because people do not report their symptoms of mania, as they don't always see these symptoms as a problem. During periods of mania, people may feel that they're on top of the world and capable of anything. And sometimes because symptoms just plain start with depression and the mania comes later. Studies show that in the primary care setting alone, 10 to 25% of those diagnosed with unipolar depression may actually have bipolar disorder. And the percentage is even higher in the psychiatric setting. This is important because incorrect treatment for depression can actually lead to episodes of mania and other problems. New research is focusing on bipolar disorder as a spectrum of experiences rather than the two poles of high and low. For some people, experiences may be very fluid and not the extreme highs and lows as some think. Patterns and severity of symptoms, or episodes of highs and lows, determine different types of bipolar disorder. The two most common types are bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. Bipolar 1 is characterized by one or more manic episodes or mixed episodes, which is when you experience symptoms of both a mania and a depression, and one or more major depressive episodes. Bipolar 1 disorder is the most severe form of the illness, marked by extreme manic episodes. Bipolar 2 disorder is characterized by one or more depressive episodes accompanied by at least one hypomanic episode. Hypomanic episodes must be clearly different from a person's non-depressed mood. Hypomanic symptoms are similar to, but less severe than manic episodes. For some, hypomanic episodes are not severe enough to cause notable problems in social activities or work. However, for others, they can be troublesome. Bipolar 2 disorder may be misdiagnosed as depression if you and your doctor don't notice the signs of hypomania. In a DBSA survey, nearly 7 out of 10 people with bipolar disorder had been misdiagnosed at least once. 60% of those people had been diagnosed with depression. We're very excited to have Dr. Mark Bauer, a well-known psychiatrist who spent much of his career focused on person-centered mental health care, here with us to tell us more about some of the less common types of bipolar disorder.
I'd like to talk a little bit about some types of bipolar disorder that often do not fit with the classic conception of mania or hypomania and depression. And most prominently is the idea of mixed features, mixed manic and depressive symptoms at the same time or rapidly alternating back and forth. Some of you know that the diagnostic manual for psychiatric disorders is the DSM, and DSM-4 has just changed to DSM-5, and they've made a very significant and I think helpful change. They used to define mixed episodes as only people who had full episodes of mania and full episodes of depression, but now they realize that this idea of high and low moods usually separated and sometimes mixing together is really an oversimplification. They're recognizing now that all or many depressive episodes in bipolar disorder can have features and symptoms of hypomania or mania, and the converse is also true, that episodes of hypomania or mania can have prominent depression. Some studies have shown that the actually main feature of hypomania or mania is not really high mood or even irritable mood, but it's hyperactivity, hyperenergetic state, either internally or externally. And the mood can either be elevated or irritable or really kind of just yucky. But what always does appear in manic or hypomanic episodes is a sense of being sped up physically and or mentally. And now the DSM-5 can accommodate that by saying, well, predominantly what you have is a depressive episode, but you have racing thoughts, pressured speech, decreased need for sleep, etc. Or you have hypomania or mania with a lot of depressive symptoms and hopelessness and sometimes even suicidal feelings at the same time. And these kind of mixing of up and down moods or depressive and hypomanic, manic symptoms can be very, very uncomfortable. So that's one type of presentation or feature of the course of bipolar disorder that is not as rare as we thought it was. And in fact, it may be the predominant way of most people experiencing the mood excursions in bipolar disorder. Now, cyclothymia is a milder form of bipolar disorder that's characterized by periodic hypomanic episodes and less severe episodes of depression that don't quite make it to a major depressive level, these go on for at least 2 years. The folks that have cyclothymia tend to have pretty unstable moods that go up and down, and very often don't come to seek treatment until they get a very significant depressive episode, because it just seems like they're moody, and people think of them as being labile or inconsistent in their mood. But it can be a forerunner of bipolar disorder. Then rapid cycling is another form which is fairly rare, but it's diagnosed when a person experiences 4 or more episodes in the course of a 12-month period, manic, hypomanic, or depressed. And rapid cycling can occur with any form of bipolar disorder, and the moods can come in any sequence. So 4 depressive episodes, 4 hypomanic episodes, 4 manic episodes in the course of bipolar disorder could all qualify someone for a diagnosis of rapid cycling. The classic course, of course, is the cyclic course, where people alternate very dramatically, like a pendulum swing from mania to depression or hypomania to depression. But that is also even rarer than rapid cycling. Finally, there is a category called unspecified bipolar and related disorders, and that applies to presentations that don't quite fit any of the other categories, but are more than just plain depression or cyclothymia. It used to be called in DSM-4 and earlier editions not otherwise specified, or NOS, but now it's got the equally vague name of unspecified bipolar and related disorders.
Thank you, Dr. Bauer. Now let's go back to the symptom list in your Living Successfully with a Mood Disorder plan. Go ahead and pause this video again to mark the impact of any symptoms of mania. You can feel free to list additional symptoms if you would like. Because everyone experiences mood disorders differently, we've included several people's real recovery stories in your handouts. Let's take a few minutes to read the first story together. You can read this and the other stories in your Real Stories of Living Successfully handout. As we read, consider what similarities and differences you have to this person's story. What can you learn from these stories? How can those lessons be applied to your life? Our first story is written by Colleen King. When I was 8 years old, I announced that when I grew up, I was going to be a famous artist and live in Paris. My mother, then a full-time college student, instilled the belief that I could be whatever I wanted. She sat me and my twin siblings down to inform us that we could attend any college we desired for free because our father died. As a kid, I didn't understand anything about Social Security or veteran survivor benefits. I just knew that my mom had given me a dream to hang on to. Creating art was an escape that helped me cope with the suicide of my father in our home and the subsequent emotional numbness that enveloped my mother. When I was 19 years old, my brother had his first psychotic break, and I was scared that I would be next. After 10 years of watching my brother decompensate with severe mental illness, I began to have uncontrollable crying spells that baffled me. Already confined in depression, intense fear that something horrific was about to occur crept in and swathed me in anxiety. I desperately sought relief from the heaviness that weighed down the muscles needed to speak, much less smile. With determination and faulty reasoning, I figured I would find out what was wrong and fix it so that I could get my life back. It wasn't an easy fix, and I couldn't do it by myself. After being diagnosed with major depressive disorder and taking antidepressants for several months, I rocketed into rapid cycling and was hospitalized for the first of many times in 1992. After many medications and more hospitalizations, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. The mania symptoms I experience are not the classic type you see in movies. I mostly experience dysphoric mania, which is the concurrent presence of depressive and manic symptoms, the most dreadful state I've ever endured. Imagine feeling despondent, exhausted, detached, and hopeless, while simultaneously agitated in warp speed. I could not sleep or eat, was confused as racing thoughts spun in my brain, while what felt like jolts of energy zapped through my torso into my extremities. I joined a 6-month study at the National Institutes of Mental Health in Bethesda, Maryland. My time living in IMH allowed me incredible opportunities to listen to some pretty smart folks explaining brain functioning and treatments for mental illness. I spent a lot of time in the vast libraries on the campus and participated in every type of therapy available to me. I especially benefited from art therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, meditation, and exercise groups. Back in California, I struggled through mood swings to continue learning about bipolar disorder. I was empowered by expressing my experience with mental illness through drawing, painting, photography, and mixed media, and having my artwork displayed in galleries. I attended many support groups and became an advocate for myself and others. Psychotherapy was an immense help in learning to cope with my new normal. As I began to get better at managing my symptoms and the psychological distress they bring, I decided I wanted to become a therapist. I went back to school and completed a Master of Science degree and am now a licensed marriage and family therapist. It's been 15 years since I was last hospitalized, though I haven't forgotten the confusion, fear, and pain of the most challenging time of my life. That's why I now have my own business specializing in working with women living with anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder. I don't consider myself recovered, as bipolar disorder is not a broken bone that I can completely recover from. I manage bipolar disorder with therapy, medication, practicing coping skills, paying attention to sleep, nutrition, exercise, and surrounding myself with healthy relationships. I also embrace joy and laughter every single day. My determination to understand bipolar disorder by educating myself, creating art, having very supportive family and friends, and an outstanding professional treatment team helped me to stabilize. I didn't just get my life back, I created the life I wanted. If you wish, you can pause the video now to read more of the stories. There are many risk factors for depression and bipolar disorder. The incidence is greater for individuals who have blood relatives, such as a parent or sibling with bipolar disorder, experience periods of high stress, abuse drugs or alcohol, and for those who have experienced major life changes or traumas. Many people have specific triggers that tend to cause an increase in manic or depressive symptoms. These may include stressful life situations, lack of sleep or changes in sleep patterns, relationship problems, substance use, medications, antidepressants, thyroid medications, appetite suppressants, seasonal changes, life events that create changes in hormone levels. And remember, men's hormone levels change as well, so this can be a trigger for both women and men. Or developing a long-term physical illness. One important way to begin living successfully with a mood disorder is to start to identify the triggers or things that often occur before an episode. Please pause the video and complete page 3 of your Living Successfully plan, indicating any triggers you may have noticed, as well as any early warning signs you may have experienced. As we begin to wrap up this first session, it's important that we remember that depression and bipolar disorder are treatable. While at one time there was a belief that people could not recover from these conditions, we now know that people can and do recover all the time. Our focus is no longer on just reducing symptoms, but on true wellness or recovery. So what does recovery or wellness mean? It'll look different to each person, but generally it's defined as a full, meaningful life in the community without hindrance from mental illness. Using that definition, or your own, what would you say wellness would look like to you? For instance, I know when I'm well, I smile and laugh easily. I can shut down negative self-talk pretty quickly, and I'm more open and engaged with friends and family. Please pause this video and take a moment to think of what you are like when you are feeling well, and jot down your thoughts on page 4 of your plan. There are many things that we can do to influence how we're feeling. Many people have found that practicing certain wellness activities can really help them improve their mood or get through a difficult time. Since the idea of wellness activities may be new to you, at the end of each session, we'll take a few minutes to try out an activity that may help us relax and lift our spirits. Session 1's practice wellness activity is to create a gratitude list. Let's all take a blank sheet of paper and write at the top, I am grateful for. Then take a few minutes to write down everything you can think of that you're grateful for. Oftentimes this is difficult to get started, but once you get going, more and more will come to you. This list is only for you, so you don't need to filter your thoughts. Just put it down. Go ahead and pause the video now to create your list. Some people have found that taking a few minutes at the end of each day to jot down a few things they're thankful for improves their mood and their outlook on the day. Of course, it's not for everyone. The purpose of these practice wellness activities are to see if it's something that might be useful for you. Thank you for joining us for Session 1. You may now move on to the Session 2 video if you wish.